I'm Sam Kiley in Kramatorsk, and this is CNN.
Hello and welcome. I'm Bianca Noblo in London. This is the Global Brief. The assault on the Ukrainian city of Mariupol appears to be coming to an end, as hundreds of soldiers have been evacuated from the besieged Azovstal steel plant. And 9 months after the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, 95% of the population doesn't have enough to eat. Then the British Foreign Secretary has proposed a new law that could break the political deadlock in Northern Ireland, but it's one that could create a lot more problems with the European Union. We'll debrief. We begin with what could be a new chapter for the war on Ukraine, as the battle for the strategic city of Mariupol effectively comes to an end. Ukraine is now working to clear the remaining troops from the Azovstal steel plant and is hailing them as heroes.
Thanks to the defense put up by the Mariupol defenders, the enemy was prevented from the redeployment of its groups. These are approximately 20,000 personnel. The enemy was not able to redeploy them into other regions, and thus it was unsuccessful in a rapid taking of Zaporizhia.
More on that shortly. And it comes as it appears Russia may be extending its range of attacks elsewhere in the east. Ukraine says a town in Donetsk that serves as an important hub for Ukrainian forces was hit by a missile. However, in Kharkiv, there are signs that Kyiv is making gains. Ukraine says that forces are advancing on Russian positions, including a border town used to resupply troops. And talks between Moscow and Kyiv have again stalled. The Kremlin says that Ukraine withdrew from discussions, while Kyiv is blaming Russia for its, quote, stereotypical mindset. Sam Kiley is in Kramatorsk for us. Sam, as Ukrainian troops pushed the Russian army back in Kharkiv, the focus was on the east, where you are, as the main theatre for potential Russian advance. But now some Western officials, including the Deputy General of NATO, are saying that Russia's losing momentum there. Is that your assessment as well?
I think the short answer to that, Bianca, is yes and no. Today, for example, there was this thrust from Popasna towards the town of Bakhmut, and local commanders on the ground said that there was a ferocious tank battle, one of the few that have been seen in this conflict on the outskirts of Bakhmut, with a factory was struck there, at least one person was killed in a missile attack on Bakhmut, and that is the headquarters at the moment really for that area in the northeast of this enclave, effectively, which is now a large piece of a chunk of territory still in government hands that the Russians want to get their hands on themselves. But if you go further north from there towards Severodonetsk, where I spent this morning, there has been a considerable win by Ukraine, forcing the Russians back across the Donetsk River after their attempted pontoon crossing earlier on in the week. Now, there's been a lot of coverage of this from essentially remote control coverage using drone footage supplied by the Ukrainians, but this is the first report that's actually been delivered from the ground and the scene at what unfolded there, Bianca.
The first signs of a Russian disaster, a Z-marked Russian tank being salvaged by Ukrainian troops. A few days ago, this was the scene on the edge of these woods. Russian pontoon bridges under ferocious Ukrainian artillery attack. The Ukrainian commander with us casts an eye to the sky looking for Russian drones. This is no place for complacency. Ukraine and NATO have claimed that Russia suffered badly here. They estimate 70 to 80 vehicles destroyed and a whole Russian battle group of 1,000 men mauled.
So we're at the edge now of the area where the Russian armour was caught after it had crossed the pontoon river. You can see down here there's a destroyed tank, next to it an armoured personnel carrier, and if we look down the road here, we've got another armoured personnel carrier and another and another. The Ukrainians were able, they say, due to their superior reconnaissance and intelligence, to work out where the Russians were going to cross and then bring in devastating levels of artillery. And this is the result. This is only the edge of it.
Russia has now shifted its attacks elsewhere, at least for now.
When you see this, how do you feel?
Super. Great. I understand that our artillery is working, and our troops are working too, because there was both artillery and ground fighting. The units, in cooperation with other troops, were pushing the enemy across the river on foot.
Shattered Russian armour is scattered along this path through the woodland. On the ground, we can't move forward. The track is mined.
A real disaster for the Russians, but something that the Ukrainians now are saying here that means that the pressure is off this particular front for now, and that they believe that the Russians are focusing more of their efforts elsewhere.
Ukrainian soldiers pick over the debris of this victory, but the chilling truth is that many of their comrades have ended up like this. And while this is a success in the grinding war for Ukraine, Russia remains an immediate threat.
And they've asked us to get out of here with their military commander because they're worried that our cars are going to attract attention and therefore attract incoming. This is still clearly an extremely active area.
And one, as it was for the Russians, that's a considerable relief to leave.
Now, Bianca, the Russians have been probing, really, trying to force their way through an arc of the front line from west of Slaviansk all the way to Severodonetsk, to that river crossing where I was reporting from there, and now they're having a go from the extreme east, almost in a directly east-west direction. They should be doing better, given that the relief of Mariupol, from their perspective, has released a large amount of troops for them to augment the pre-existing forces that they had here. But we haven't seen any significant breakthrough by the Russians in over 3 weeks here. Bianca?
Sam Kiley for us in Kramatorsk. Thank you. And Ukraine is hoping to secure a prisoner swap for those fighters leaving the steel plant in Mariupol. But we haven't heard of any specific agreement, nor do we know how many fighters may still be trapped inside. Both government troops and Azov regiment fighters were among the last remaining defenders. Russia says it will interrogate those who have surrendered. And today, lawmakers in Moscow debated whether to ban a prisoner exchange that includes Azov fighters, whom Russia accuses of being neo-Nazis. Listen to the Speaker of the Russian Duma.
Nazi criminals should not be eligible for exchange. They are war criminals, and we should do everything we can so they are put before a court.
Ukraine says the Mariupol defenders changed the course of the war by holding up Russian forces and preventing their redeployment. But it came at great personal cost. Melissa Bell reminds us of the dire conditions that the fighters endured for weeks underground.
Its images had become iconic, its fighters symbols of Ukrainian resistance. Until the surrender of Azovstal, with the wounded seen here on images released by Russia's defense ministry. Fighters, now prisoners of war, evacuated in their hundreds since Monday from the site. A victory for Russia, but a source of hope also for the families of the soldiers themselves. Tatiana doesn't know if her husband's amongst those evacuated so far, but she and her daughter Lyra have gone food shopping just in case after hearing about the news on TV. Since then, they've received a text that's given them heart. He wrote, "Girls, I love you, kiss you. I may be offline for a while. Everything will be fine." The sprawling Soviet-era steel plant had become a refuge as much of Mariupol was razed to the ground back in March. The evacuation of the civilians that had sought shelter there began on May 1st, leaving hundreds of soldiers inside, under frequent attack and with dwindling supplies of both food and medicine. Their families had called for foreign mediation by Turkey or China to try and secure their release. Some of their wives meeting with the Pope to try and draw attention to their plight.
The bleeding wound in the battle for Donbass is Mariupol. Azovstal, the stronghold, the last stronghold of Ukrainian resistance.
That resistance now ending in a surrender, with the fate of the fighters now hanging in the balance.
Ukraine needs Ukrainian heroes alive. To bring the boys home, the work continues, and this work needs delicacy and time.
Long the embodiment of Ukrainian resistance, Azovstal, now an important test of Russia's goodwill. Melissa Bell, CNN, Kyiv.
And on Russian television, a rare and candid admission that the war against Ukraine is not going well. A prominent former Russian colonel says Russia's offensive is bound to get worse, and he adds that Ukraine can raise 1 million soldiers armed with foreign weapons, and that any reports that the Ukrainian military is breaking down are flat out wrong.
I must say, let's not drink information tranquilizers, because sometimes information is spread about hearing some moral or psychological breakdown of Ukraine's armed forces, as if they are nearing a crisis of morale or a fracture. None of this is close to reality.
Coming up after the break, a dire humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, with most of the country not getting enough to eat. CNN looks at the desperate conditions on the ground next. And the UK government wants to change a key Brexit provision without EU approval. What they're proposing and how Europe's responding. Coming up next.
The data shows that the Caribbean and Latin America have some of the highest rates of sex crimes in the world, and sex crimes ties into human trafficking. My name is Jonathan Bagan. I'm based in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm an attorney at law and also chairman of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes. Say 10 years ago, it was said, even in my country, that nobody should speak out about human trafficking because they will come to get you, the mafia. Now that hundreds of people know about it and are speaking out against it, that darkness has been destroyed, and now we're bringing the issue into the light. Schools across Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, the students were really positive about it. They wrote poems, spoken word poems, they made videos.
I've risen and believed.
And those videos went on to the local media, onto the radio and television.
On arrival, you are forced into captivity and a life of servitude.
So the students were inspired to see their fellow students being connected to CNN International. A lot of kids now know the signs of human trafficking, what it is and how to avoid it. So we may have saved some lives. My Freedom Day helped raise awareness, educate children, and I hope it inspires politicians and the governments across the region to do more to stop this crime from happening. It's impactful and important, and we hope to do even better next year.
Transformation, technology, new Marketplace Europe.
Grand designs and grand price tags to match. We're exploring the luxurious world of watches.
Marketplace Europe, Sunday on CNN.
It's been 9 months since the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. Since then, life for most has become a daily struggle against poverty as the country faces an economic crisis. Human Rights Watch says that 95% of the population doesn't have enough to eat, and 9 million are on the brink of famine-like conditions. Christiana Amanpour shows us the desperation that's causing.
Under a scorching sun, standing patiently for hours in organized lines, hundreds of newly poor Afghans wait for their monthly handout. Men on one side, women on the other. Here, the UN's World Food Programme is delivering cash assistance, the equivalent of $43 per family. Khalid Ahmadzai is the coordinator. He says he's seen the need explode, and right from the start, the stories are dire.
A few days ago, one woman came to me, and she told me that I want to give you my son by 16,000 Afghani. Just give me the Afghani. And she was really crying, and that was the worst feeling that I had in my life.
Are you serious?
Yeah, this is a serious thing that we had a distribution at the first day. So the hunger is too much high here.
You know, we've heard those stories, but I've never heard it from somebody who's actually seen it.
I have seen it. It's too much better, and it hurts me a lot.
Everyone we met is hurting. According to the International Rescue Committee, almost half the population of Afghanistan lives on less than one meal a day. And the UN says nearly 9 million people risk famine-like conditions. Farishte has 5 kids. And how many meals per day can you eat? When you don't have money, she tells us, when you don't have a job, you don't have income, would you be able to eat proper food when there's no work? Khotima is a widow. They should let us work because we have to become the men of the family so we can find bread for the children. None of my 6 kids have shoes, and with 3,000 Afghanis, what will I be able to do in 6 months' time? You just want work. I have to work, she says. At this WFP distribution site in Kabul, you do see women working, and women mostly with their faces uncovered. Outside, Taliban slogans plastered over the blast walls tout victory over the Americans and claim to be of the people for the people. But while security has improved since they took over, the country is facing economic collapse. And that shows up all over the tiny bodies we see at the Indira Gandhi Children's Hospital. It's the biggest in Afghanistan, now heaving under the extra weight. Dr. Mohammed Yaqub Sharafat tells us that 20 to 30% of the babies in this neonatal ward are malnourished. Suddenly, he rushes to the side of one who's stopped breathing. For 5 minutes, we watched him pump his heart until he comes back to life. But for how long? Even in the womb, the decks are stacked against them.
From one side, the mothers are not getting well nutrition.
Wow, so it's a triple whammy. The mothers aren't nourished enough.
Yeah.
The economy is bad. They have too many children. And they're overworking themselves.
So all these factors together make this situation to they give birth premature babies.
Because they're under sanctions, the Taliban are struggling to pay salaries. So the International Committee of the Red Cross pays all the doctors and nurses at this hospital and at 32 others across the country. That's about 10,000 health workers in all. Look at this child. He's 2.5 years old. His name is Mohammed. He's malnourished. How much food is she able to give her child at home? Why does he look like this? His mother says she's had nothing but breast milk to feed him, but now can't afford enough to eat to keep producing even that. It's the same for Shazia. Her 7-month-old baby has severe pneumonia, but at least she gets fed here at the hospital so that she can breastfeed her daughter. Back home, we don't have this kind of food, unfortunately, she says. If we have food for lunch, we don't have anything for dinner. While we're here, the electricity's gone out. It happens all the time, the director tells us. We watch a doctor carry on by the light of a mobile phone until the electricity comes back. We end this day in the tiniest dwellings amongst the poorest of Kabul's poor. Waliullah and Basmina have 6 children, while she prepares their meal of eggs, 2 small bowls of beans and 2 flatbreads. The 8- and 10-year-old are out scavenging waste paper to sell and polishing shoes. It's their only income since Waliullah injured his back and can no longer work as a laborer. He tells us their 10-month-old baby is malnourished. I always worry and stress about this, says Basmina. But she tells her kids, God will be kind to us one day. Christiana Manpour, CNN, Kabul, Afghanistan.
In Lebanon, official results show that voters in the struggling country have broken Hezbollah's coalition majority in parliament, and reformist groups picked up 10% of the seats. The election is the first since the economy collapsed, and protests swept the country after the port explosion that killed more than 200 people in 2020. The British government is proposing a new law to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. That's the controversial Brexit provision that keeps the territory inside an EU trade zone, avoiding a hard border with Ireland, which I explained to you last night. The UK Foreign Secretary says that the protocol is not working and needs to be fixed.
The bill will ensure that goods moving and staying within the UK are freed of unnecessary bureaucracy through our new Green Channel. At the same time, it ensures that goods destined for the EU undergo the full checks and controls applied under EU law.
But the European Union is not happy about the prospect of a unilateral move, to say the least. The Commission President says that if the UK decides to move ahead with the legislation, the EU will respond with, quote, all measures at its disposal. One British lawmaker is urging Prime Minister Boris Johnson to avoid needless confrontations. Bob Neal is a Conservative MP and chair of the Commons Justice Committee, and he joins me now from London. Welcome to the programme, sir.
Thank you. Good evening.
Could you explain to our viewers what it is about the existing Northern Ireland Protocol that the Prime Minister believes is currently damaging for those in Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
I think the difficulty is this. The protocol was intended to ensure that the delicate balance that you had, where Britain had left the EU but the Republic remained in, was dealt with in such a way that there could be trade between the UK and Northern Ireland, and trade between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, but not in such a way as impinged on the rules of the EU single market. And that's a fair enough concept. I think the problem has been, and when one looked at the debate today in the Commons, people on virtually all sides of the House accepted there are practical problems when it's working. Some of the rules upon which the protocol is based are EU rules which date back probably 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. So before you had digitized systems of recording things, they were designed, for example, for container loads of shipping rather than lorry loads going across simply on the car ferry from the UK mainland to Northern Ireland and vice versa. So there are practical problems. The issue is then how best do we resolve that? And that's then connected with the situation in Northern Ireland with the current stalemate in the devolved assembly and, of course, maintaining a functioning democracy in Northern Ireland, a functioning executive, is important for the Good Friday Agreement. And perhaps the final thing I should say in that regard is that when we signed up to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement and the protocol, that specifically says in its first clause that the protocol operates without prejudice to the Good Friday Agreement. So the Good Friday Trade Agreement legally trumps the protocol should there be conflict. I think the issue is, are we in that situation yet? And if so, what's the right way to resolve it?
Well, yes, exactly. Are we in that situation? Because if you listen to, obviously, what the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister have cited as some of these issues, they've revolved around things like British sausages, chilled meats, veterinary checks, yes, issues like wanting to be able to cut VAT because of the cost of living crisis. But do you think that the idea of potentially breaching international law because of those things is quite a disproportionate and inflammatory response to the practical issues at hand that you're describing?
Well, I'm always reluctant to do anything that's unilateral. I certainly said in the House today that Great Britain, like the US, like any advanced democracy, ought to cherish its reputation as keepers of international law very dearly. But there are real practical problems, and there's no getting away from that. There have been about 6 months of negotiation between the UK and the EU. Vice President Šefčovič of the European Commission, I think, has interacted very constructively with the Foreign Secretary, but his negotiating mandate from the Commission is limited. Now, I hope that the Commission will reflect or change his negotiating mandate, give him more scope, and equally, of course, there have to be compromises on both sides. That also then is against the backdrop of a situation where the Northern Ireland's devolved executive and assembly have not functioned effectively for months now. And of course, that of itself falls foul of the Good Friday Agreement. So it's trying to balance those various moving parts that we're trying to get right.
And do you think that the optics and charge of potentially breaching international law would actually deter this Prime Minister, especially at a moment where, and I'm not saying that they're commensurate or comparable, but when Britain is playing a leading role on the international stage in supporting Ukraine and condemning, rightly so, President Putin for breaking all of these international laws, it surely undermines Britain's position if the Prime Minister is then accused of breaking international law himself?
Well, as you rightly say, there isn't actually the remotest comparability, of course, but the principle that we shall stick to agreements which we sign up to is, of course, always the right one. Now, there can be circumstances where the practical outworking of agreement is not as we wish. The answer to that, as a lawyer, I always said, is you get the parties to negotiate. And sometimes you have to negotiate pretty vigorously. I can think of circumstances where it might be that if an inability to come to an agreement as to how the protocol should be reformed, and it was always envisaged, it's clear from the text of the protocol, it was always accepted the protocol was going to be reformed and wasn't the final word on these matters. If that couldn't be reformed, and if it, on clear evidence, was getting in the way of the operation of the Good Friday Agreement, which is critical, we all agree, for the maintenance of peace and prosperity and good order in Northern Ireland, and its good relationship with the Republic. If that were to be threatened, there are certain circumstances where a case in international law of necessity might be made. But I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. And in fairness, the government seemed to me to be putting this in terms of being an insurance policy that they wanted to have. We haven't seen the details of the legislation. I called for the legislation to be published at the earliest sensible stage without inflaming the position, so that we can then test it against the evidence as to what the problems are and against the legal advice that the government may have. But the Foreign Secretary, in fairness, repeatedly said, we want to get a negotiated solution. That's what I've urged them to do. I would have thought with goodwill that's still achievable.
So Bob Neal, British Conservative MP, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And thank you for watching. Do stay with CNN for political coverage coming up, and I will see you again tomorrow.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
More and more to the strikes, very, very close. They want us to start moving.
There's a sense the Russians haven't yet brought their full destructive power to bear.
Vladimir and his men have been alert since 4 a.m, fearing a Russian attack.
They were living here in frigid temperatures.
Sounds to me like many of these war crimes will go unpunished.
In Helsinki,
Kyiv,
Kramatorsk.
This is CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
A scare for Liverpool, but the Premier League title race is going down to the wire. Tiger gets a juicy grouping for the first round of the PGA Championship, and how a Prosecco cork marred a historic achievement in pro cycling. Hello, welcome to CNN World Sport. I'm Alex Thomas in London. Liverpool's historic hunt for a quadruple of trophies marches on. Jurgen Klopp's men needing to dig deep in their latest English Premier League match, recovering from a goal down to take the title race to the final day of the season. Liverpool winning 2-1 at Southampton, but only after coming back from the shock of seeing the home team take the lead through Nathan Redmond's slightly deflected shot within a quarter of an hour. Liverpool level by half-time thanks to an equaliser from Takumi Minamino in his first Premier League game since February. Then after the break, a bizarre winner for Liverpool from a corner and the head of Joel Matip, only his third goal of the season. Back in January, Manchester City had a 14-point lead. Now there's only 1 point in it, and the title will be decided on Sunday. Manchester City can hang on to their crown by beating Aston Villa. Liverpool's quadruple bid rests on winning at home to Wolves and hoping that City drop points. Let's get the thoughts of John Gibbons, who is head of content for the Anfield Wrap, a multimedia platform focusing on all things Liverpool. John, considering the short turnaround from their last match, the FA Cup final, and how many games they've played throughout the entirety of the season, how impressed are you that this Liverpool team just seems to recover time and again when behind?
Yeah, very impressed. I thought we were excellent tonight, considering, as you say, how little time there was between that and the FA Cup final, how many changes that they made, and you know the fact that team's probably never played together before and probably never will again. I thought they did so well to come together for this, you know, game and get the win. And like you say, they went behind 1-0, and you know, a bit of a controversial goal, I think. You know, it looked like there was a clear foul in the build-up, and then, you know, to be fair, it's a really good hit, but they stay calm, they stay together, they stay composed, and they get the win, and that's what this Liverpool team do, and that's what they're famous for. And yeah, I'm really, really pleased tonight. We've done everything that we can to stay with this chance of a league title come Sunday.
Did you always have faith, or were you a little bit worried when you saw all those team changes?
I wasn't really when I saw the team changes, because I think there's a lot of really good players in there. When we were 1-0 down, it did have a bit of a wobble. If I was honest, I did think, is this going to be one of those games and are they going to struggle to break Southampton down now? Because the problem when you go 1-0 down is obviously they can put men behind the ball and make it hard for you. And if you haven't got that understanding with each other and you haven't got that fast interplay and natural rhythm that comes from playing with each other, you can struggle a little bit. But as I say, they stayed really calm and they played the football. I thought they played some excellent stuff, especially in that first half, and got the rewards. And, you know, there's a lot of good footballers out there tonight. And, you know, they don't maybe play as much as they like to, but they showed the quality today.
So it goes down to the final day of the season, the Premier League title still in Manchester City's hands. But how do you rate Aston Villa's chances of doing Liverpool a favour, considering that Anfield legend Steven Gerrard's in their dugout, and that's not the only Liverpool connection they have?
Yeah, it's really funny how it's happened, isn't it? You know, Steven Gerrard, who never won a league title at Anfield, at Liverpool, of course, won one as a manager at Rangers, you know, might be the one to win it for Liverpool all these years later. You know, Phil Coutinho, Danny Ings, as well, with that Liverpool connection, and they've got a couple of Everton players in there as well. So it's really funny how it's worked out. But Aston Villa are a dangerous side. We played them a couple of weeks ago, and it caused us a lot of problems over the top. You know, City's struggling a little bit for injuries at the moment to the back. So we're all hoping that, you know, that we can cause them a few problems, and they can cause them a few problems, and we'll have our ears glued to radios or whatever we can, making sure that we're in touch with what's going on.
Well, I was up there for the title celebrations a couple of years ago, and I know how manic it gets and how passionate it is up there. Realistically, the quadruple's a big ask. So if you had to choose, would most fans want the Premier League title or the Champions League?
Oh, it's really tough, and I think every fan will probably, tell you a different thing. But for me, I think the European Cup is still the big one, and I can't wait to get over to Paris. And once you're there and you taste it, you realise how big it is. And that's the game where 1-on-1 against Real Madrid, who are European royalty, of course, and won it more times than anyone else. I think to win that game would be something special. So although I would love to get our 20th league title, I think the European Cup still is the big one for me. But listen, we'll take either, and if we get either of those, then it'll be a fantastic season for Liverpool.
Well, I might see you in Paris, John. We really appreciate your time here on CNN World Sport. John Gibbons there from the Anfield Wrap. Thanks, John. Best of luck this week.
Cheers.
The golfers preparing for the PGA Championship have been having their say on Phil Mickelson's absence, and Tiger Woods tells us if his fragile body will let him pull off another miracle win.
What makes a great golf? Is it the one that electrifies? The one that is too good to be true? That steals our breath? The one that shakes the world with a thunderstorm of 1,000 voices? The one that rewrites football history? Or is it a goal that is far greater than that? A goal we at Hyundai are committed to, driven by heart and technical prowess. A goal that humanity can only score together under one jersey, one flag, and for one monumental cause, our united world for sustainability. When we rise as one team, team-centric, we can still win this game.
Great things are coming. Are you in?
We are now in a major point of flux from being a telco into being a techco. And I think we're not the only big company that is looking at it. We are moving it really into a time where we're looking into consumer digital products, enterprise digital products, and really looking at providing solutions, not just providing connectivity.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering a city's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
I love being here.
And making discoveries that wow.
You've got to be joking. Nice here, isn't it?
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
Hello again, World Sports back with the build-up to the second major of the men's golf season, the PGA Championship. And Tiger Woods has been given a superstar grouping for the opening round. He's been paired with arguably the two most entertaining players since Tiger himself hit the scene. Rory McIlroy, a two-time PGA Championship winner himself, and Jordan Spieth, who's won every other major title except this one. That trio with a combined 115 tour wins and 22 majors to their names. The other group to really make you sit up and take notice contains new Masters champ Scottie Scheffler, 2021 US Open winner Jon Rahm, and 2020 PGA champion Colin Morikawa, the current top three in the world rankings. Let's get out to Don Riddell at Southern Hills in Oklahoma. Don, Tiger Woods, speaking to the media earlier on Tuesday, says he can win this week, but will his fragile body let him?
We'll see. Hey, Alex, he was pretty matter-of-fact about the can you win here question. He was like, yes, I do. Next question, please. We heard something similar from him, of course, at Augusta a few weeks ago, which really surprised everybody. Surprised us that he was even playing the Masters. But it speaks to the measure of the man that despite everything that's happened to him, the car accident and all the other injuries, he is in it to win it, and that is why he is here, and he thinks he can do it. He had a slightly easier day than yesterday. Of course, we talked 24 hours ago, Alex, about how he played the back nine on Monday. He didn't take to the course today. He spent most of his time on the range working on his drive, his short game, chipping, putting, the usual kind of thing. And he spent a full half hour with the media. And I mention that because the way they do the press conferences here is that the golfers have to stand. So Tiger Woods had to stand for a full half hour taking questions. That didn't seem to bother him. Clearly, he is getting stronger and more confident. And one of the things that people were really interested in was how did he perceive his Masters performance? Because when he shot that 71, when he made the cut, which was better than many other top players managed to do at Augusta last month, it seemed like it was a win. It was a win for him that he just managed to play all 4 rounds and get through the full week. But it was interesting to get his perspective because he was kind of disappointed.
Everyone around me was very happy and ecstatic that I got around all 72 holes. I did not see it that way on Monday. I was a little ticked that I didn't putt well, and felt like I was hitting it good enough, and I wish I had the stamina. I still have tough days, and things aren't going to be as easy as people might think, but I feel like I'm doing better. I'm having more days in which are better, more positive, able to practice a little bit longer, so I'm able to do activities and things that I was hoping to do, and I'm finally able to do them.
So for an athlete who's been through everything that Tiger Woods has been through, you might think it would be ideal to come back and play a couple of flat golf courses. Well, Augusta is certainly not that. He referred to that as the Mount Everest. And for all that Oklahoma is a very famously flat state in this country, we found a pretty hilly spot. It's called Southern Hills for a reason. That may be a little bit of a challenge for Tiger getting up and down, but it's nothing like as severe as the roller coaster at Augusta. And another challenge, Alex, that all the golfers will be facing this week is the wind. Again, Oklahoma is famous for it. Somebody today said in one of the press conferences, we're probably going to get 4 different kinds of wind here this week. Welcome to Oklahoma.
And on the show yesterday, you told us why it's so strange that Phil Mickelson isn't there as the defending champion. Some of the players have been having their say about it.
Yeah, including Tiger himself. Of course, he and Phil haven't always seen eye to eye, but he talked at great length about the Phil Mickelson situation. Of course, it's to do with the comments he made about Saudi Arabia, the Saudi government, the breakaway Saudi Golf Tour, which is having a huge amount of money poured into it by the government in Saudi Arabia. And it was interesting because when Tiger has had his down moments, Phil was known to call him up to check on him and see if he was okay. Tiger has not done the same for Phil Mickelson. They clearly have very strong disagreements about this situation. Tiger is very, very supportive of the PGA Tour and all it stands for. I wasn't sure this morning whether Phil Mickelson was still going to be a big talker, to be honest with you, Alex, but the first press conference, Rory McIlroy, third question, Phil, the Saudi situation, what do you think about Phil? Why isn't he here? It remained a topic of conversation throughout the day, and this is what the players had to say about it.
Phil's got to do what Phil's got to do. He's a good friend of mine. I would have liked to see him defend. I know he's played good here in the past, but he's got to do what he's got to do.
Unfortunate, sad. This should be a celebration, right? I mean, he won a major championship at 50 years old. It was possibly his last, big moment in the game of golf, and I think he should be here this week.
A reminder that Phil Mickelson hasn't played since those highly controversial comments were made public. We thought he'd be back this week to defend his title. He's not. Let's see what the future brings. Back to you, Alex.
Absolutely. Don, thanks very much for now. Much more from Don and the team at the PGA Championship throughout the week. We've got some reaction to English football's first openly gay male professional footballer for more than 30 years, and how a history-making rider almost ruined his day with a Prosecco cork.
300 million years ago, there was no Africa, Asia, Americas, or Europe. Just one big supercontinent, Pangea. And today, there is still a force connecting those divided by distance, reversing millions of years of rifting, making far feel close, bringing there to here. Turkish Airlines.
When you follow a story, you may be asked to take risks. And sometimes go down a path that's not marked.
Where Iraqi troops would pre-position and these Americans would advise them.
These protests are a test for Hamas.
Any understanding between Israel and Gaza could quickly fall apart again.
The protesters are just outside a military base. They're throwing rocks and security forces firing tear gas.
When you dare to take risks, you witness passion and persistence.
And they just want to get their past be processed so they can get out of this facility.
And that's where change happens.
The one thing they have in common is a determination to keep going.
Biniam Gamai, a 22-year-old from Eritrea, has made professional cycling history by becoming the first black African rider to win a stage at one of the Grand Tours. Gamai's victory coming in the 196-kilometre or 121-mile stage 10 of the Giro d'Italia. He actually recovered from taking a wrong turn with a few miles to go to outsprint rival Mathieu van der Poel, who led the Tour de France through 6 stages last year. Bizarrely, Gamai then taken to hospital after popping a Prosecco cork into his left eye on the podium. But it's a huge moment of history for the young man from Northeast Africa.
Yeah, you know, until I start the Giro, yeah, we have possibility to win, to make a good result. So this is also part of the success, our team, my family, everybody, you know, so it's, you know, every day they come new history, so I'm really grateful and happy about what I did.
And his eye seems to be okay, you'll be pleased to know. To another pioneering young athlete in the form of 17-year-old Jake Daniels. He's become the first openly gay professional male footballer here in England for more than 30 years.
It's been such a long time of lying, and I've just processed every day of just about how I want to do it, when I want to do it, and I think now is just the right time to do it. You know, I feel like I'm ready to tell people about my story. I want people to know the real me, and lying all the time just isn't what I've wanted to do, and it has been a struggle, but now I just do feel like I'm ready to be myself, be free, and just be confident with it all. You know, I think because I'm younger, people can think, you know, this kid's brave enough to do this, so I feel like I'll be able to, and I just want to do that for other people, and I want, maybe if there is Premier League footballers that again are ready to come out or they want to and they just are waiting, I want someone to contact me and ask, like, how's it been? What was the reaction like? So I want to help other people. I just hate knowing that people are in the same situation that I'm in.
Well, we've been speaking to referee Ryan Atkin, who became the only openly gay man in professional football here in the UK when he came out 5 years ago. He officiates in the 3 professional divisions just below the Premier League. He told our own Amanda Davis earlier that Jake Daniels is quite simply making history.
The whole world is celebrating the fact that somebody who is just 17 has found the confidence and has come out publicly as a gay man, and not only for himself, but to help others. And I think that's a real big passion of his. And I just think, you know, it's a monumentous day for us within the footballing world to have somebody who potentially is now going to pave the way for other players.
And can you put into context for us what it has taken for him as a 17-year-old to do this? How big a leap for him to have done this in football with so much talk, so much attention in recent years about the issue?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, I can certainly, you know, resonate when he says about lying and having to hide who he is and how it affects your performance, you know, and he really does talk about that as being his authentic self, and the fact that when he came out the next day, he scored 4 goals. And it really does make a difference to your performance and who you are as a person. But what he's done is he's recognised that actually within the industry, it needs a current player to come out, you know, and he talks about the fact that he could have waited until he retired, but he wasn't willing to wait that long, and he wasn't willing to lie for his life. And actually, he wanted a life within football and to be an openly gay man. So, you know, we really should, you know, clap the fact that he has been, you know, groundbreaking in this leadership within the UK. We do have openly gay players within the Women's Super League, but within the male game, this is truly groundbreaking. And we don't know, it could be a catalyst potentially for others within the game to publicly come out and have that visibility in the game, because ultimately that's what we always lack. We lack the visibility of LGBTQ plus people within the professional game, and he has now given that visibility, you know, at the highest standards.
I'll come on to, you know, what happens next, but everybody rightly giving, you know, him credit, and we're talking about the positive messages coming out after his announcement. From your experience, will it all be positivity and support, or will there be that negativity that he'll have to be dealing with as well?
He's an intelligent young man, and he knows there will be negativity. People will use his sexuality against him if he's, you know, if he's not playing well or if he's unfit. And unfortunately, that's something that is prevalent in football. And I think with that, he needs to recognise and have things in place where he can ensure that he's got a good support network around him. And listen, you know, we have been waiting for this key element of a player coming out. Now that we've got a player coming out in the United Kingdom, it's going to take the leagues and it's going to take the professional bodies to now protect him, but also start to deal with things like racism and homophobia in the game.
And from what you know, I know you do a lot of work with the likes of Stonewall UK. What impact do you think it will have? We're talking about it as a watershed moment. Will there be more people who will do the same?
I hope so. And I hope that actually what people will see is charities like Stonewall, who have worked tirelessly to really, you know, ensure equality around LGBTQ+. You know, he's reached out to this charity to help him with his journey, with his story coming out, and he's trusted them. And for me, they have been part of that journey and they have delivered. And so the future really is, you know, is bright. And I hope that, you know, his words of getting people to approach him and to talk to him about his own journey will help others within the game.
Referee Ryan Atkin there. Now we're about to look ahead to the conference finals in the NBA playoffs and how a young fan almost threw away a rare baseball memento.
Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no!
My name's Pippa Bailey. I work for Ipsos and I'm head of our climate change and sustainability practice. So many companies that we speak to struggle with, you know, how to talk about sustainability, how to share the great campaigns that they're doing. And there's kind of a number of guidelines people need to follow. First of all, making sure you've got your own house in order, that your own environment, social and governance policies are heading in the right direction before you then go kind of on the offensive with a campaign where you want to illustrate what great work you're doing. But also to kind of avoid greenwashing is making sure that that really fits under the brand banner, that it represents what your brand is about, so that it feels very intuitive for consumers, for citizens.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
Advancement, adaptation, new Marketplace Middle East.
Travel and tourism trends in the region.
Marketplace Middle East, Saturday on CNN.
Welcome back to World Sport. By this time tomorrow, we should know whether Frankfurt or Glasgow Rangers will be the winners of the Europa League, UEFA's second-tier club competition behind the Champions League. Eintracht Frankfurt training in Germany on Tuesday before flying to host city Sevilla in Spain.